battle took place on the Dust Flats. Top Hat had mounted a counterattack at Silverfield. The odds are stacked against the Chupacabras. The player has to make some hard choices. He needs to try to make the best of the situation with the goal of still achieving his objective for this conflict. This is the second battle of Silverfield. Welcome back to Silverfield. Now this battle is very one-sided, which sometimes can happen in campaigns. In the last episode, Top Hat had taken many steps to shape this battle into his favor. First, they had blinded the Chupacabras at the Battle of Thaumadrift, then launched a spoiling attack against the Chupacabras' main attack force, fixing the Chupacabras in the Dust Flats. A lot of things had to go right, and luckily for Top Hat, they did. This campaign is not about setting up evenly matched battles in terms of PV. It's a war. Both sides are trying to win with deception and stacking the odds in their favor. The defenders are the Chupacabras, who was using Silverfield as a forward operations base to make repairs to the Chupacabra attack force. Therefore, the Murphy's Misfits HQ unit is located here, which makes for a very nice prize for the taking, especially for Dale's Guard, who, according to their recent history, have some grievances that they need to urgently discuss with these traitors. But just like the last time when an HQ unit tried to flee a battle, they have to pack their bags, fill out the necessary paperwork, and brush their teeth. And don't forget to floss. To see how long that takes, the player needs to roll a D3 plus 1, and he rolled a 3. That's a bummer. This player just can't catch a break. With a roll of a 3, the meager forces for the Chupacabras will need to defend the HQ unit, who cannot even activate until turn 4. I reiterate, sometimes you just gotta make do with what you've got and make the best of a bad situation. Let's have a look at the defenders. Murphy's Misfits, a recently acquired subsidiary of the Chupacabras, has their urban security lance deployed to Silverfield. It is comprised of 3 urban mechs. Also deployed is a half lance of Ontos tanks. The HQ has 2 vehicles. One is a Browning Mobile HQ, and the other is a repurposed MASH truck. If these vehicles get destroyed before the commanders board them and scoot off to safety, well, then they're stuck inside the installation, just waiting to be captured. The Chupacabra's rear detachment is also present. The remaining mechs of the Chupacabra Reserve Company is here, forming an ad hoc lance. It is comprised of a Dragonfly, a Wolfhound, and a Hermes II. Also present is a platoon of Chupacabra battle armor infantry armed with lasers. The Chupacabras deployed their force in a defensive perimeter around the HQ unit. Murphy's Misfits are holding the left flank with the 2 Ontos tanks and the urban mechs. In front of them are the battle armor infantry tucked in close to the rock formation. In front of the HQ unit, hunkered down in cover of some buildings, is the Chupacabra ad hoc reserve lance. And their right flank, the west side of the map, is completely unprotected. The Chupacabras are hoping that the natural terrain and assortment of buildings will be enough to shield the HQ unit from enemy fire. The Alliance has deployed the Rise, Shine, and Dominate, which consists of 2 Wasps, a Firefly, and a Javelin. Also, the Papa Popinski's Pain Squad is at half strength. It is comprised of a Mad Cat and a Warhammer. The other Warhammer and Mad Cat were destroyed at a previous battle of Silverfield. And oh, by the way, a viewer had left a comment with a name suggestion for the Pain Squad, and the player liked it. Though this battle took place before the player read the suggestion, but the player has since adopted the new name for the Merc unit. So the new name is Papa Popinski's Pain Posse. But as for me, I'm going to call them the P4. The Grinning Top Hat has deployed their first mech company, which has 3 lances. The first lance is a Fire Lance, which has 2 archers, a longbow, and a trebuchet. Both of the archers have a special pilot ability of Sniper. The second lance is a half lance of Hatchmans, who unfortunately lost 2 mechs in a previous battle and have not yet been replaced. The third lance is a medium battle lance with 2 Blackjacks, a Shadowhawk, and a Star Slayer. Now, some of you might be thinking, why not just blow up the building with the misfit officers inside? And the players could just do that. But capturing them is much more beneficial in terms of war chest points and, of course, bragging rights. To capture the HQ unit, the Alliance will need to destroy the 2 HQ vehicles before they are activated in turn 4. The Alliance is attacking from the south, and the Chupacabras have already deployed. But before we get into the battle, we have a new notable noble to notify you in a noticeable notice. 68th Panzer Regiment. Thank you for taking up the noble cause and supporting our channel. I also want to give special thanks to all the Patreon members. Thank you for your continued support of our wacky narrative battle reports. Okay, let's see how this counterattack unfolds. On to turn 1. The Chupacabras won the initiative, so the Alliance will need to move and shoot first. The Alliance player activates his Hatchetman lance and sprints onto the battlefield, trying to take advantage of the blind spot in the Chupacabra defense. Wanting to see how the Alliance will deploy, the Chupacabra player activates his Ontos heavy battle tanks and has them stand still. The Alliance activates his Rise, Shine, and Dominate lance. The Firefly moves into cover, while the rest of the lance jumps forward. They're relying on range and the increased TMM to protect them from the incoming Chupacabra fire. The Chupacabras activate their reserve lance, and the Dragonfly jumps into cover, and the Wolfhound and Hermes 2 moves to the previous position of the Dragonfly. The Alliance deploys his P4 lance, and the Mad Cat and Warhammer ground move out into the open, but line up their weapons on the now isolated Dragonfly. Well, it seems the Alliance is stacking on the Chupacabra's left flank, as he had hoped. But he wants to try to buy some time, so he ground moves 2 of his urban mechs into a position to provide some support. The Urby next to the tanks stands still, watching his sector of fire. The Alliance activates his medium battle lance. The entire lance jumps onto the battlefield. The Blackjacks jump into cover, with one landing on the rock formation. For proportional movement, the Alliance will need to move his last lance, the Fire Lance. Preferring not to charge into the kill zone of the Ontos heavy battle tanks, the Fire Lance deploys on the left and ground moves onto the battlefield. The Chupacabra activated his infantry and had them sprint towards the Alliance's deployment zone. He wants to appear that he is flanking the Alliance mechs and endangering their rear arcs, but he said he has something different in mind. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. The Alliance will shoot first. They open up their shooting with the Rise, Shine, and Dominate lance, as well as the P4 and the Trebuchet opening fire on the Dragonfly in cover. The target number ranged from an 11 to a 12. With such a high target number, it's no surprise they all missed, but the Mad Cat came close enough that he vaporized the Dragonfly's cover. Next up, the rest of the mechs all took aim at the Hermes 2 in cover. The target number ranged between 8 and 11. The 2 archers and the Shadowhawk hit, dealing a total of 10 damage, which was enough to take out the Hermes 2, though it can still shoot back this turn. The Chupacabras return fire. The urban mechs and the reserves all open fire on the Trebuchet, hoping to take down something in this battle. An urban mech scored a critical hit, which dealt 2 damage to the armor of the mech and critical damage to its engine. The Dragonfly also scored a hit, dealing 3 more damage to the Trebuchet, removing the last of its armor. But unfortunately, the rest had all missed and the Trebuchet wasn't taken out. With shooting complete, this brings turn 1 to a close. The Chupacabras lost a mech, and the Alliance Trebuchet took some critical damage. The Chupacabras cannot evacuate their HQ unit for another 3 turns. Saving the HQ unit might not be an option for the Chupacabras after all. The Chupacabra player knew he was in a bad spot, but he had sort of a plan for this. Let's take a quick tactical pause and have a look at why the Chupacabras deployed the way they did. He stacked his forces on the right, leaving his left wide open. Top Hat took the bait and came running in on the left, leaving the bottom right open. The Chupacabra player's original plan was to harass Top Hat long enough so his HQ unit could make an escape to the north and the rest of his forces could escape southeast to the Dust Flats. But he realized this is no longer an option. He decided to cut his losses and retreat his fighting forces to the Dust Flats and rejoin with the bulk of his army. However, he needed to convince the armed forces of Murphy's Misfits to abandon their commander. But it turns out these guys have no moral compass, and in a blink of an eye, they resolve to abandon the HQ unit and head southeast. Let's see if they can make it happen. The Chupacabras won the initiative again. The Alliance will need to move and shoot first. Top Hat activates his Rise, Shine, and Dominate lance, and the 2 Wasps and Javelin jump to the top of that rock formation, while the Firefly ground moves into cover. The Chupacabras activate his on-toast heavy battle tanks and they sprint south. The Alliance player still thinks the Chupacabras are just trying to get in behind his forces, and he wants the Chupacabras to also be worried about the same thing. So he sprints his hatchetmen past the Dragonfly and towards the enemy's HQ unit. The Urban Lance is just too slow to break to the southeast to the Dust Flats, and for the off chance that his HQ unit can actually escape this battle, they shuffle towards the HQ to provide some defense. Staying aggressive, the Alliance medium battle lance jumps forward. The Shadowhawk and Star Slayer jump into cover, and the Blackjacks do the same. The Chupacabra player activates his reserves, and they sprint behind a rock formation, breaking line of sight. For proportional movement, Top Hat needed to move 2 lances, so he activated P4, which sprinted to his right flank, using the elevated rail line as cover. The Trebuchet sprinted off the battle. The Top Hat player said there was no need to risk the loss of any mechs today. The Fire Lance moved forward, trying to get as much cover as possible. Even after seeing the reserves sprint away, the Alliance player has not caught on that the Chupacabras are abandoning their HQ unit to its fate. He thought the Chupacabra player was just trying to get into position to attack his flank and rear. He wanted to have his forces in position for the apparent Chupacabra attack for the next turn. The Chupacabra player had thought for a moment to keep a portion of his battle armor on the field. He could easily get in behind the Shadowhawk and take it down. But the main army needed as many forces as possible, so he decided to sprint off the map. Seeing the battle armor escape, the Alliance player finally realized what was happening, but it was too late. All the movement was complete. It was time for the shooting, and the Alliance has to shoot first. Only the longbow could see the on-toast tanks with a target number of 7, but it missed with a 3. The Star Slayer and Shadowhawk could see the urban mechs and opened fire with a target number of 8. Using a lucky point, they both hit, dealing a total of 5 damage to the mech. This necessitated 1 critical check, and it was a 10, fire control damaged. The blue Blackjack had range on the mash truck of the HQ unit and opened fire, hitting it and dealing 3 damage, which destroyed the vehicle. The rest of the Alliance did not have line of sight. The Chupacabras can now shoot back. Only the urban mechs had targets, and they both fired at the Star Slayer with a target number of 8, and they both hit, dealing 4 damage to the mech's armor. And that's it for shooting in turn 2. Murphy's Misfits lost 1 of their HQ vehicles. With the exception of the urban mechs, the entire Chupacabra force is breaking to the southeast to rejoin the army, leaving the HQ behind to be captured. The Chupacabras won the initiative again for the 3rd time in a row, although I don't think it will help them much. The Alliance will need to move and shoot first. The Alliance player already knew he had won the battle, despite the enemy was escaping. His goal now was to make sure he captured the HQ unit. To do so, he needed to destroy the last HQ vehicle. That's easy enough, but he wanted to do it with flair and be the first player to use melee combat with a hatchetman. Unfortunately, the hatchetmen are too far away to ground move to their target and hit it with a hatchet. The rock formation was too steep to climb, and these mechs don't have jump jets. So the hatchetmen climbed over the elevated rail, giving them line of sight of the HQ unit. The Chupacabra player activated his tanks. They pretended for a little while to be distraught about abandoning their commander, but then they hastily departed the battlefield. The Alliance activates Rise, Shine, and Dominate. The Firefly stands still, and the Wasps and Javelin jump into position, providing overwatch of the urban mechs and the HQ unit. For proportional movement, the Alliance activates their Blackjack Lance. The player positions them to threaten the urban mechs while at the same time guarding the Rise, Shine, and Dominate Lance's rear arc, just in case if the Chupacabras try to turn around and fire upon them. It's a legitimate concern, but it wasn't going to happen. The Chupacabra player activated his reserve lance, and they hightailed it off the battlefield. The Alliance player had to activate his last 2 lances for proportional movement. The P4 lance advanced, and the Fire Lance stood still to improve their indirect fire during the shooting phase. The Chupacabra player activated his last unit, the Urban Security Lance. Even if they had sprinted, these garbage cans had no chance to get off the battlefield, so they decided to close on the hatchetmen, and by doing so they actually broke line of sight with most of Top Hat's mechs, but they are still standing in front of the hatchetmen. And as for the urban mech with some sense, he shoveled back into cover behind that building. Let's get into the shooting phase. The Alliance will shoot first. For this battle, the mission for the Hatchman was to close and destroy the HQ unit, but these pesky urban mechs was just too tempting of a target for the player, so they both target the undamaged urban mech and open fire. The target number was a 4 because the walking trash can has a TMM of 0. And folks, that is how we make a dumpster fire in the BattleTech universe. But the Alliance wasn't done yet. The Wasp and Javelin target the heavily damaged urban mech and open fire with a target number of 6, and they both hit, which obliterated the urban mech. As for the HQ vehicle, it has 2 armor and 2 structure. To make sure it was destroyed, the Wasp and the Shadowhawk target the parked vehicle. The target number was very low, and the vehicle was destroyed. While also directing the indirect fire of the Fire Lance, the Star Slayer lines up his weapons on the last urban mech and opens fire, and the mech was brought down. Before the mechs are destroyed, the urban mechs can shoot back. One shot at the Star Slayer and took another 2 points of armor off the mech. The other 2 mechs fired at the Red Hatchman and stripped 4 armor points off the mech. And this brings the battle to a close. The HQ unit of Murphy's Misfits, stuck inside the building, eventually surrendered and are now prisoners of war. I wouldn't want to be these guys. First they betrayed the Alliance, and then they got betrayed by the Chupacabras, and then they got captured by the Alliance. Poetic justice, I guess. However, the Chupacabra Reserve Unit, a half-lance of Ontos heavy battle tanks, and a platoon of battle armored infantry broke off from this battle to regroup with the Chupacabra's main army. Now the Chupacabras will have a hard choice to make, and before we end this episode, let's take a quick look at their options. The Chupacabras are surrounded, but they're not giving up. They could attack west to Silverfield with the hope of breaking out of the encirclement. They could then regroup and try to attack the starport from a different route. Escaping via dropships is an option, but a dangerous one. The dust flats are under the protective umbrella of the air defenses at the starport. The dropships would have to dodge anti-air weapons on both the approach and the departure from the dust flats, and the Chupacabra player is already lamenting his bad luck. Losing a dropship full of mechs seemed very likely. The third option is the Hail Mary play, just an all-out attack against the starport. If you were the Chupacabra player, what would you do if you were in this situation? Let us know in the comments. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed the battle report. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at the next battle.